Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run for the UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days, as it is remaining fairly cold over the coming days, as we are going to continue to see some very cold Arctic air heading our way. These northeasterly winds are going to persist for much of this working week before they do start to move away into the weekend. Now at the weekend we do start to see the wind veering more from a westerly, but it's going to be a fairly slack flow, at least initially, which will mean the cold air does linger, and we are likely to see low pressure starting to sit over the top of us or to our south as a bit of a cut-off low, and that could give us lots of heavy rain. So yes, things are going to slowly turn milder into the weekend and start of next week, but we are going to be turning unsettled once again with widespread moderate to heavy precipitation, both showers and longer spells of rain. So yeah, we're swapping cold and dry conditions for something a little bit milder, but also quite a bit wetter and potentially even a bit windier as well. And that pattern is what we're seeing from the long range charts as well as we head into early May. Unsettled, but milder or even a little bit warmer from some of the runs. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now if you start on the live radar, you can see at the moment we've got lots of thick cloud and drizzly rain developing. We did see some light to moderate rain earlier today, really holding the temperatures back, making it feel like we're in mid-January once again, with many areas not seeing the top temperature today getting much above the high single digits, which is really quite cold for the time of year. I don't know the exact statistics of sort of cold April days, but have heard some statistics floating around that this is some of the coldest conditions we've seen in many years for this time of year, for late April, and I'm not surprised given the feel like temperature out there, given how it felt out there earlier, and it is going to drop even lower tonight with temperatures getting close to freezing in places, and this is going to kind of continue over the coming days before slowly easing off into the weekend. And as you can see, this light rain, where it does persist, that will really hold those temperatures down. But because we are seeing turn night now, and we are going to see some radiation where we have clearer skies, actually where the clearer skies are, really is going to get colder overnight. This rainfall hopefully will dissipate through the morning, and hopefully tomorrow is slightly brighter, and that will allow those temperatures to rise by a degree or two. Now, if you put on the temperatures this evening, you can see how it is cold in the east. Look at it, mostly blues, which indicate temperatures in the single digits, dropping away further through the evening. You can see, though, across western parts, still pretty mild. This is because we are under higher pressure there, with the slightly milder air masses not getting that easterly flow. So a real big northwest-southeast split. You can see across much of northern Europe, it's even colder. Not only do these areas have the cold air in place, similar cold air to what we have, but also, of course, don't have the influence of slightly milder seas, because, of course, even though the North Sea is actually keeping us still pretty chilly, and it's giving a fresh wind chill out there and bringing moisture for the cloud and rain, it is going to keep those temperatures slightly higher than if we had land to our east, for example, like many of these areas across Europe, and that's why those temperatures are dropping away already, and of course clearer skies do aid that. We could see some lighter blues over the coming days as well. With clearer skies, temperatures could drop close to freezing or below freezing pretty much anywhere over the next few days, depending on those cloud amounts overnight. Now, if you look at the latest UKV, you can see all that precipitation clearing away through this evening, and as we head into tomorrow afternoon, we could still see some thicker cloud in place and maybe some patchy rain, but for most, we're seeing a little bit more sunshine. So it looks pretty decent here on the live radar. It looks like it could be a pretty stunning day, but the temperatures are still going to be pretty cold. Milder than today because of more sunshine and less precipitation, but still well below average, and with that east to northeasterly flow, going to make it feel like it is much colder than it actually is. As we head into Wednesday, this pattern continues, and wherever we have clear skies, the risk of frost does increase massively, and into Wednesday afternoon is a similar picture. Lots of sunshine, but with that northeasterly wind, it is going to still feel really quite chilly indeed. As we head through Wednesday night into Thursday, you can start to see that wind direction slightly shifting to more of a northwesterly to a westerly, and that as low pressure starts to push in off the Atlantic, but it's going to be very slow moving. It's all because the higher pressure that's giving us the cold northeasterly at the moment isn't dissipating, it's just moving even further northwards, trapping the low over the top of us. So we're going to see a very slow transition to slightly milder temperatures by the weekend, and it's as this low eventually arrives, starting though, as I said, to bring more rain. So temperatures will slowly rise, at least the upper end temperatures will rise. Surface temperatures will be dependent on precipitation and cloud amounts. At least the upper end temperatures will start to return more towards average. But look at this, start to see more heavy rain spiraling from the south. Typical pattern when we have a cut-off low. You can just see lots of heavy rain, and you can see the low is sat to our south, or multiple lows within a larger area of low pressure just sat over the top of us or to our south, cut off from the main flow, and that is why they're not moving away. And instead here you can see they're just kind of spiraling over the top of us, and will give plenty of rain through the weekend into the start of next week. Now, if you look at the upper air temperatures, you can see it is cold at the moment, especially in the east, and it's going to turn more widely colder over the next few days, which will extend that risk of frost further westwards. Even though it's pretty mild at the moment, those frosts could arrive further westwards as well, as we do see this very cold air start to push in. However, you see, as we head into Friday and Saturday, we do see that wind direction shift. Now, the upper air temperatures initially do stay pretty cold, as it is a very slow transition. But as we head into the weekend, you see those upper air temperatures start to slowly rise from the south, especially into Saturday, back towards average or close to average. But as I said, it's accompanied by heavy rain and clouds. It probably won't feel all too great. Now, we are going to have a look at the 2 metre temperatures here, and they are pretty abysmal, I must say. You see this afternoon, look at that across much of England, 7 or 8 degrees at best. To the west, 17 to 19 degrees across the Republic of Ireland, but that isn't going to last all too long, as we do start to see that colder air shift further westwards. Overnight tonight could see a frost in a few areas, but it will be dependent on cloud amounts, which still look fairly thick this evening. As we head into Tuesday, you can see temperatures are widely slightly higher, more into the low double digits, but still going to be single digits in the south and the east, as we do still see some cloud and precipitation there. But most, it's a couple of degrees milder. Still feel cold, but on the thermometer is a little bit warmer, as we do see a bit more sunshine. As we head into Wednesday, because we've got clearer skies, you can see quite a few more areas getting into those lighter blues, indicating temperatures dropping down close to freezing or below freezing. And by Wednesday afternoon, another chilly day. Temperatures well below average, but more in the double digits, especially further westwards and inland. The east coast will be still really quite raw with that easterly flow, but it's all due to the fact we've got a lot more sunshine. But with that sunshine, again, we see those temperatures drop away, especially further northwards, with those clearer skies, close to freezing or below freezing. And then Thursday, we start to see that transition starting to occur. 13, 14, perhaps in the far south, but in many areas we've got thicker cloud and rain moving in back into the single digits. And that continues into Friday. Look at that, across many northern and eastern areas. Clear skies, very cold air in place, below freezing. So really quite chilly start to Friday potentially there. And then as we head into the Friday afternoon, look at that across parts of northern England, especially with the higher ground, kind of see the perfect storm. Heavy rain and cloud, and still some very cold air in place. Unlikely to see any wintriness. There is a risk, but really we're just looking at a pretty cold and miserable day. And the same is where the dividing line is between the rain and the cold air. 6 or 7 degrees across many parts of the Midlands. And that continues into Saturday. Again, another pretty cold night. And by Saturday afternoon, temperatures could get up to 14, 15 degrees because we are seeing milder air move in. But look at this, a strip of 9 degrees there. And that's all due to the fact that we've got thick cloud and rain. That just emphasised the power of the cloud and rain this time of year. So it is very touch and go, some of these temperatures. It could be 13, 14, or it could be 8 or 9, all dependent on where the rain and cloud is. But you can see the general gist is remaining cold, especially cold in the next couple of days, but even into the weekend still cold and slowly turning more unsettled as we head into the final days of April. And if you look at the longer range, you can see at the moment we've got this northeasterly wind, and it is dragging lots of cold air across northern Europe in general. You can see it doesn't look spectacular, but if we actually look at the temperature deviation, you can see it is a very cold pool across much of Europe here for the time of year, and temperatures widely down towards freezing overnight tonight across much of inland Europe. As we progress beyond that though, you can see the high pressure eventually starts to shift further northwards, and this allows the low to break through on Thursday. But as you can see, it sits to our south, spirals over the top of us, and gets cut off for a period of time. And this is essentially where, if you look at the 300 HPA winds, it dives northwards and it dives southwards, and in this gap where we've got no jet stream flowing west to east, we see this low just sit in the pocket, and it just is going to begin quite a lot of persistent precipitation and persistent unsettled conditions. Now, eventually, it does break away and we see more of a generic westerly flow and potentially even some higher pressure in the longer term. But again, we see attempts from that higher pressure to build up to our north and drag another relatively chilly air mass in. Now, of course, we are now talking about early May, and every day we progress towards summer, the chances of anything cold it does start to diminish, simply because we do run out of cold air. But even here, with a northeasterly flow, air dragging in off the North Sea, temperatures by day still struggling to get into the double digits. So even the GFS here does have a slight improvement during the first few days of May, maybe milder, maybe a little bit more settled with some higher pressure influences, but it tries again to go back towards something colder as we head towards the end of this run. Now, if you compare to the GM, again, northeasterly wind flowing over the next few days, the pressure eventually parks itself to our south with this cut-off low that persists to the start of next week, and then eventually we do start to see a bit of a breakthrough of the Atlantic, but still relatively chilly air mass is still dominating, so it's not actually looking all too great. Still pretty unsettled and still relatively cold, and still seeing some high pressure to our north, so still keeping a relatively slow moving flow, but it is more west based, so we are likely beyond this into early May to see a lot of this mild North Atlantic air start to influence us, which is really the only positive you can take from this, because it is likely to also aid precipitation with more moisture in it, of course. Now, if you look at the ECMWF, again, a northeasterly wind moving in. If we just quickly refresh that to get the full 240 hours, northeasterly flow continuing to push in, the cut-off low developing really quite horrible conditions through the weekend. It starts for next week with lots of rain and cloud around, and then eventually in towards day 10, we still see low pressure sitting to our west, and instead of getting cut off, sort of sat to our south, it kind of gets blocked out in the Atlantic because of this higher pressure to our east. Now, this actually draws up some very mild air for Europe, so it goes from very cold to very mild, but for the UK, we're in between the mild air and the cold air, sat under the low. So for us, yes, it would be milder. Yes, you can see some very warm air actually creeping into the east, but that's just likely to enhance heavy rain or even thunderstorms, which is going to start to come into our risks over the next few weeks as we head into the latter part of spring. We're starting to get towards proper convective season, where we start to see those very warm air masses, and we could see some big storms trigger, and this is the sort of pattern that could be conducive of that into early May. But of course, we need to see a lot more confidence before we start talking about any thunderstorm risk. But it is typical this time of year to start to see our first proper thundery plumes, some hot and humid air mixed with a lower pressure out to our west or our south. We'll have to keep a close eye on that. But if we do finish by looking at the ensembles, you can see the next sort of 5 or 6 days cold, especially the next 2 or 3, even into the weekend where those upper air temperatures do start to return back towards average. It's still going to be cold, as we still have cold air sat at the surface, but also cloud and rain increasing, which is likely to keep those temperatures still towards the below average area. And you can see longer term, pretty strong consistency now that we are going to stay around average or be around average, above or below. Precipitation is moderate. It's not ridiculous. Of course, if there was an Atlantic onslaught, we'd see ridiculous amounts of rain, but a pretty typical convective pattern where we see lots of areas of precipitation, but ensembles unsure with it at this stage because don't quite have the resolution to sort of sort out where small little weather fronts or sort of small little convective systems will be. So do expect the precipitation to change quite a lot in the short term with this sort of pattern, with the sort of cut-off low, as little things do crop up in the short range. So likely see that precipitation increase at times and reduce. So we'll have to wait and see, but a general unsettled pattern is looking likely. Bit of glimmer of hope, perhaps some very warm runs starting to appear there in the longer run. I'm talking about those getting towards 7, 8 up towards 10 degrees angel for the HPA, so sort of 5+ degrees above average. Those are the sort of runs we're starting to talk about the risk of getting towards 20 degrees again, maybe even higher than that. Again, only a few of those runs, but definitely does give a glimmer of hope into early May. Now, if you look at the 2 meter temperatures, look at that, a big upwards trend over the next week to 10 days. Again, we're kind of going from very cold, a good 5 to 8 degrees below average, back towards average. So going from high single digits back towards the mid-teens. So we're not really seeing any major warmth here. We're just seeing a warm up from very cold back towards average. So kind of what we'd expect. You can see longer range, a few runs getting into the low 20s, but once again, majority around the mid-teens, so around average for the time of year. If we do finish by looking at the ECWF ensembles, it's a fairly similar picture. Very cold at the moment, good 8 to 10 degrees below average, trending back towards average by the weekend into the start of next week, but still looking pretty unsettled, and again turning perhaps mild into early May with a few very warm runs appearing, but no real consistency at this stage. There's a bit of hope there, but I think the big headline is staying cold over the next few days. Weekend next week, we do start to turn less cold, but still probably below average, at least for the weekend and maybe Monday next week, with more increasing precipitation. And then, of course, we could start seeing maybe warmer air move in from the west, as initially it's looking like a cut-off low, but maybe only a cut-off low for a few days, where eventually we see the flow return. But it is going to be a very slow transition because the blocking isn't breaking apart, it's just moving around, kind of milling to our north and our west, just allowing the flow to move a little bit more than it is at the moment, where it's staying in straight from the northeast, and that is going to allow the air masses to mix a bit more, and that's why we are seeing a bit of a transition. But by no means is it a quick transition at all, and by no means are we going to flick from being very cold to very warm. Any warm conditions look at least a week to 10 days away, maybe even longer than that, and it does look like a very slow transition with the overall state of the North Atlantic at the moment. If we are going to see some very warm blasts or a heat wave or something like that, then we're going to have to see a big shift, and that is unlikely in the medium to short range. We'll have to see, of course, things can change very quickly, but for the time being, remaining cold, turning more unsettled, and hopefully turning a little bit milder into early May. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.